Okay, so let's start today's class. And today's class is about state, right? So we're going to learn about how React, one of the ways React manages state. We're also going to learn about React hooks, and in particular, two hooks. We're going to learn about the useState hook and the useEffect hook. Okay? And of course, then we will build a project. It's a traffic light, and that traffic light will use at least the useState hook. Okay? Now, from previous classes, we already know that React components basically take data and render that data, right? So if we have like the seconds in the simple counter from last class, that component, the simple counter, will take the seconds property and render that seconds, right? That timing. But again, if you have like a Jumbotron or a car, that car will have some properties and it will render a different car every time, or will render a different Jumbotron every time, okay? So we know that components take data from properties, okay? And properties are essentially the parameters of the component function. So when we have a component, let's say our like salute component, we can render something like this, and this will be a salute component. So whatever name property that we pass, then we can render that differently. So that means that when we're using this salute component, we can use it like this: salute name equals John. So this component will essentially render an H1 that says hello John. Okay? Now, what happens if we modify the parameters or the property? If we change this value over here, it changed the rendering, okay? So that means that every time we change the properties, the component re-renders itself to reflect this change, okay? And it will do it as many times as necessary. Now, what I'm saying with this is that properties is one of the ways components gets data, right? Via properties. Now, components can also get data from static variables.
You are recording the class?
What? Yeah, recording, yeah. That's what you asked? Recording?
No?
You asked if I'm recording? Yeah, I'm recording. So, components can also take data from static variables, right? Let's make an example. Let's make an example here. Will be like, for example, if we have a constant called company address. Let's call it like this: company address, and we have like, I don't know, 100 Main Street, Miami. This is probably not a real address, but anyway, 23176, right? So this is a variable, and we can have a component and this component might render the address okay. Now, this component will also show a div with the address inside, right? So 100 Street, Miami, Florida, 33176, and div. Now, what is the issue here is that even if you change, first of all, it's a const, so there is no way to change this. But even if it's a let variable, right? and you try to modify its value, the component would not know that the value is changed, and it will stay with the same rendering, 100 street. Even if you change the variable value, this wouldn't make the component to re-render, okay? So right now you have properties that re-render the component every time they change. You have static variables that don't render the component again when they change. And we will also have state. And this state is essentially data inside the component, okay? So it's data that the component will contain itself, okay? Remember in last class we talked about visual components and container components, container component being the ones that have data inside. So these are the type of components that we want to build. Now in this case, you might think, well, why we don't create a display address component, and let's do it like this. Let address equals, I'm using the same address, right? So let's say I have this address and I'm returning a div with that address. Okay? Of course, it will render that address. That's, I mean, there is no discussion around it. Sorry? Yeah, it shows the address because that's the variable name, right? Address. So it will render a div with the address inside. Now, if I have another div, let's say, let's make this a little bit more complex. Let's say we have two divs. First is the address, and then let's put a button here. Change address. Right? So we have a way to display the address and a button to change the address. Of course, this button is not tied to anything. Nothing will happen when we click this button. But remember, when you have a button, you have a property to, when you click the button, do something, right? What is the name of that property? OnClick. So you can say, okay, OnClick, and whatever function you put there, if you click the button, that's the function that will get called. So we can do something in this function like this. Address equals, I don't know, Dallas, Texas. So notice that I'm making a function that is changing the address value, right? So this function, when I click the function, is trying to change the variable address to a new address, right? And do you think this will work? Yes or no?
Yes. Yeah.
It will not. Let me explain why. It's because this is a function. So every time the component gets re-rendered, the function takes whatever value you are passing here and is using that to render the address, right? So it's never going to change it.
Oh, so it does that, and no matter what you click.
Exactly, because every time you render the component, whatever variable you initialized here, that's the value of the variable. And then, exactly, and then here it will render 100 Street, Miami, Florida 33176. Okay, so this doesn't work for internal state. Okay, so this doesn't work. A variable, that's what I'm trying to get you. It's like variables don't work for internal state. They work, I mean, you can use it to hold temporary state that you can use then to render some data. That's good. But whatever is calculated, it will be calculated again and again and again. Every time the component re-renders, that variable will be generated again.
Oh, because it reads the function.
Exactly, it will run the function.
Okay.
It will run the function. Every time the component renders, it will just execute the function. So everything inside the function will get evaluated. So it will create the variable, and the variable will be assigned the same value every time. Okay? Now, how do we solve this issue? The way we solve it is using a hook, a React hook, or the useState hook. Okay? And this is the third way we can modify the value. Have the internal data. So a hook is I would say it's a fairly not that new, but it's I think it's over probably over 6 years now. So when React was created, it didn't have hooks, right? Hooks were added to React probably 6 years ago. And the way we use it is like this. We'll modify this to use a hook. We do something like this, cons. And we will explain how this works in a minute. Set address, useState. Okay, so with this change, notice that here we are using the state hook. Okay, now what is the state hook doing? The state hook, when you have a state hook, by the way, you see that useState is a function, right? So the parameter of the function is the initial value of that state. So this is the variable address. We're creating a variable address. And the second one is the function that modifies, that allows me to modify the variable or the state. Don't think about the variable. You're not modifying the variable. You're modifying the state, okay? So address is the value of the state, and set address will be the function to modify that state, okay? Now, we will see why we write it in this way. And this will be the initial value. So this means that address will have 100 Street, Miami, Florida, etc. But when we click that button, the set address function will change the state, and because the state is changed, the component will re-render itself again. Now, the next time the component re-renders, now the state is not 100 Street, Miami anymore. It's basically Dallas, Texas, and that's what we print. That's what we will see on the screen. Okay. Now, what happens when we click the button again?
It will change it
To what?
to Dallas, Texas.
It's already Dallas, Texas. So what happened?
It
It will stay as Dallas,
stay
Texas.
there, right?
Yeah, exactly. It will stay as Dallas, Texas because you're just changing it to that value again and again. But we'll see. Okay. So let's see what is the. By the way, you can only put useState functions inside React components. Okay? Don't put useState outside of React components because that doesn't work outside of React component. Hooks only work inside React components. You cannot put this over here. That doesn't work. You have to put it inside the component. Usually right here on the top. Of course, the last thing in the component is the return instruction, okay? So you put all the states on the top, and then you add more stuff, and then you put all the return at the end, okay? Now, let's see what is the syntax of a state. Remember, this have to be on a React inside a React component. And by the way, you can have as many as you want, right? You can have one for the address, but if you want, you can have. Oops. So this is for the address, but you can have another one for the name. And you can have another one for the age. And this might be, instead of a string, it could be a number. Okay?
You can also make those user inputs.
Sorry?
Like in the on-click, you can make it just a user input that the user would put it in at that time.
Yeah, we will see that as an example. Yeah. Or you can have it show modal, set show modal, use state false. So what I'm saying is that state can hold data, right? It could be string, it could be arrays, it could be booleans, it could be objects, anything can be in a state, right? Now, if you notice the syntax is cons, we usually tend to use cons because we know that we cannot reassign cons, okay? So, and in square brackets, we put two things. One is the state name, like a variable, for example, address, and then the function that will allow me to modify that state. And the convention is to use set the name of the variable.
It doesn't have to be, just the convention.
That's the thing, it doesn't have to be. So you can technically right here is change address, and that's technically correct. It's just that it's not the convention. Okay? We use the convention to be able to identify that this comes from a state. Just for that. But you can put another name. Or you can, I mean, the name of the variable can be anything, but the function should be set, should be, not must be, should be set and the name of the variable. Okay? So name, set name, age, set age, show modal. You see, this is a bigger variable name. Set show modal.
Why did you go to Pascal case with that? On the second, the one you have highlighted, why is it different case than the first one?
Where? This one?
Because it's a React.
Which one?
Well, you have show modal, camel case before it, and then show modal.
This is camel case as well. Both are camel case.
Okay, I just saw the show modal as capital S.
Yeah, because the second part after.
Oh, it's camel. Set is the.
Oh, okay. Cool. So now, useState is a function, okay? But that means that you need to import that function. Remember, everything that you use should be created by yourself or imported. From where do we import this function? From React. So you can do useState, and this has to be imported from React. Okay? So hooks are part of the React library, so that means that we need to import them from React. Okay? Questions about state?
I mean, I have questions, but I'm not sure if you're going to talk about it.
Okay. So, well, they're pretty straightforward. Right now we have a variable and a function to be able to change that state. So we have a variable to grab the state value, and we have a function to change the state value. Okay? Now, how can we use this? Multiple ways. Let's put an example. Let's make a counter, and I think you saw that in the lesson, right? So let's make a counter component. Let's say we have a function counter, right? By the way, how do you call the up and down, the likes? Yeah. So let's make a like dislike button. Now, how we can count the likes?
We need to
We need a state, right? An internal state. So we do const likes set likes, and then
use state.
use state.
The initial value.
What would be the value?
0, I guess.
0, because there's no likes, right? Perfect. Now let's make component. Sorry. Let's make a like dislike button, right? So we can do a button. Well, let's put a div, and then we put a button to like and a button to dislike. So this would be the like, and the dislike. Okay? Oh, we need to show how many likes we have, right? Good call. So div. So how do we render the number of likes? Likes, but how we put it?
Between
Curlies, right? Likes. I mean, this is pretty, it will look awful, but it will still work. Okay, so we have a component that will show 0 likes, and then a button that says like, and a button that says dislike. Yes?
Pero ¿cómo se muestra los likes arriba?
Sorry? How do you show it?
dictating?
It would say 0 likes.
Y los que no son, y los no me gustan. El dislike.
I'm counting them. So when you hit like, I will add 1, and when you hit dislike, I will subtract 1. Just that.
No, but he's-
Oh, I see where you point. Okay, no. Let's do that. Okay.
All the bad.
I mean,
If he has one for likes, he has to have one for
instead of a counter, now we are just adding up, right? Okay, so we can avoid doing this one and just put likes, dislike, right? So it will be basically 2 buttons, one for likes and one for dislikes. And if you click one or the other, they will be going up. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we have 2 states in this case. Now, we need to make them work, right? Because right now, nothing is changing that state. We are only, and if the funny thing is that if I put this in a code in my let's say my template, right? I will create a new file here, the likes. So notice that,
You have to import everything.
oh, I need to export it as well. And I need to import this. Oh, by the way, you see it there? Okay, use state from here. Oh, we need the type here, type button.
Can you put dislikes?
No, it's just ESLint messing with me right now. But
it's, you put on the variable.
let me
dislikes.
remove it. Just let me disable for a minute. Okay.
You gotta add an S to dislikes on the.
Yeah, it's just cleaner because. Okay, so what do you say?
The
Dislikes.
dislike, you have to make it dislikes.
Oh, dislikes. That's true. Cool. So you see in this component, I'm using the likes. So I'm using the data from the state, but I'm not using the functions. So there is nothing changing these states, right? And if I use this component here, let's do likes.
Nothing, no action, of course.
Well, at least I will see 0, 0, right? 0 likes, 0 dislikes. So what I want to do is every time I click on this button, the likes will start going up, and if I click this button, the dislikes will start going up. Okay? Now we can even do it like, well, no, because then it will be. Actually, yeah. We can make something crazy later, but let's keep it like that for now. Okay, so we have the component now. We need to make the button be able to be clicked. Okay. And what is the property that we use for that? On click. So we can do on click here.
I'm guessing we call the set like or set dislike.
Okay, and on click here. Now, one thing that I want you to start doing is instead of creating the functions right there, right? Instead of doing the functions right here, you start adding functions to the component. And these functions, we usually call them handlers. A handler usually has the handle name on front, and then it has some description of what is this handling, right? So for example, if I want to handle the like, I will call it handle like. And that will be an arrow function. Always as arrow functions. That's the only thing that is necessary here. And then we will have another handle dislike. And notice that I'm still keeping them as camel case, right? Because it's a variable name, identifier. And instead of creating the function, I'm just putting the function here. So this will be the handle like, and the other one will be the handle dislike. So what I'm getting with this is that my code starts getting a little bit cleaner, because otherwise it will be everything messy in the GSX, right? It will be a lot cleaner. Now, the convention is to put states on the top, handlers on the middle. We will see the effects later, so effects then, and then the return. That's the usual convention. So for now, we have state, handlers. Now, what will we do when we click the like button?
I guess you call the setLikes function.
We call the setLike, and now let's call it with a static value. Let's call it with 20, right? And for the dislike, we can call it setDislikes with 10. So that means that when we click the like button, it will set the likes to 20. And when we click the dislike, it will set the dislikes to 10, right? We're just giving it a static value. Let's see it. Click 20. If we click it again, what it should happen?
20.
Nothing, right? It will stay at 20. The same with dislikes. It will set it at 10, and then it will stay there. Questions? So you know where this function comes from? It's from the state. So remember, variable name and then function to change that value. Same with dislikes. Dislikes, set dislikes. Now, what if I want to actually increase the value by 1?
You create another function.
Not necessarily.
Likes one.
Likes plus 1, because we already know that likes have the current value. So if we add 1, that would be, and the same here, dislikes plus 1. We are always adding 1 to the amount of likes, correct?
Yeah.
And let's see it now. As long as I'm clicking it, it will start adding. Same for dislikes. Okay? Now, what if we want to, well, questions before I move on to the next? What if we want to, if we click likes, we decrease dislike and the opposite?
Minus, what is minus 1?
Yeah, but what would we need to be changed here? So this is the event, this is the handler that, this is the function that handles the like.
Then you should call their handle dislike on the function.
Why handle dislike?
Because if you click, it will give a like, and then it will call the dislike function.
But the dislike will add 1.
No.
I don't want to add 1 on both. I want to add the likes and then lower the dislike.
Dislikes?
Sorry?
You take away the dislikes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Set dislike.
And then the other one.
Set dislikes minus 1. Now, I only want to do this, and that's exactly what I wanted to do, but let me set likes, okay? So likes minus 1. Now, I mean, this will work, of course, but notice the thing that I might not like. It's getting negatives, right? I don't like those negatives. So I can make conditionals here, right? Only if the dislikes are bigger than 0. And same here, only if the likes bigger than 0. So now I can add all the likes that I want, but as soon as I start disliking, the likes are going down, right? I know this is a weird dynamic, but you get the point. It's like the state, right, is changing. Now, one beautiful thing about the state is that you will see the state in the React Dev Tools. So if you open the React Dev Tools here, and you check that component, right, the like component, let me get to the likes component, you will see that it has 2 states, right, 12 and 6. Now, sadly, the states don't have names in here. They are ordered in the way they appear in the code, right? So in the code, notice that we have likes first, dislikes second. So in that's the order that they have here in the hooks section of your component. So this first one is the likes, and the second one is the dislike. And by the way, you can change them directly here, so you can see the change in the value. Okay. Now, this is pretty cool, right? So, but let me go a step further, because remember, we always want to make the distinction between container components and visual components. It's not always necessary. Again, this component works pretty well like this, right? I have 12 likes, 9 dislikes. I'm counting them, perfect. But what if I want to, instead of having all these div and buttons inside my component, my likes component, I can just call likes view, pass the amount of likes, and pass the amount of dislikes, and then on like, handle like, and on dislike, handle dislike. Okay, of course, this likes view is a component that I don't have yet, but I actually will create it right here. So this will be props dot likes, this will be props dot dislikes, and this will be props dot on like, and this will be props dot on dislike.
So a property could be an event too?
A property could be a function, yeah. Like on click. On click is a property, right? Now check this out. I have all my state in the likes component, right? I have the state, I have the handlers, and for rendering the actual component, I'm passing that responsibility to a different component, and this is the likes view component. You notice that the likes view is a visual component, right? It only takes data from the props and renders that data. In this case, the likes, the dislikes, and whenever I do click, I'm calling that the handler right here. So right now this is the same, exactly the same. But I divided my two components, so one is a container, and I'm just making this distinction so you can see now that I have a container and a visual component, right? One is the container that has the state, and the other one is the visual component that is only rendering information. Notice here that I had the likes, you see, this one has state, and I had the likes view, and these only have properties. So every time the properties change, like dislikes, you see it changes here, and a new rendering takes place. Okay? Question. By the way, it's not always mandatory that you do it like that, but I want you to make the distinction here. So here you have a visual component that's only taking data from props and rendering that data, and here you have a component that has internal state. Okay? Got it? Not necessary, but it's a good distinction to make. Yeah, question?
Yes, using this pattern of visual component and the other one?
Containers.
The container component, does it have anything to do with security or something?
No. It's just understanding how your data flows through your application. Again, it's not necessary for this to work, and we can revert this back to a single component.
Oh, it's better though.
Yeah, for big applications, it's the best way to go, but again, it's not necessary all the time. We can keep everything in a single So this is handle like, and this will be handle dislike. Okay? So single component. Questions, questions, questions? Yes? Okay, so this is what a state looks like. Now, in here we're just counting, right? I want to put several examples of how we can use a state. We're just counting likes and dislikes. This is pretty simple. But what if we want to make a form, right? What if we want to make a component, like, remember the contact form that we created in a different class? In that contact form, we have inputs, okay? So how inputs work in React? Also with state. So we can do something like this. We can have export function contact form. Contact form. And we have to create a state. Let's do just one import, the, I don't know, for a name, right? Or the email. We want to input the email, the user email. Oh, sorry. So we need state for that email. So how would that state look like? We only need to create a state.
So const, I guess email. and then
Square
set
brackets.
Yeah.
Email.
Set
Set
email.
email
Set email.
Equals to
equals
use state.
Use state. What would be the initial value?
Some random email.
No, I want the user to enter the email.
Oh, just an empty string.
Empty string, exactly. Okay. Now, let's make a div with an input.
Can you use that useState as a placeholder?
No, the placeholder will have its own, like john@gmail.com. This is a placeholder. And by the way, I just noticed that some people don't understand placeholders enough, and they think that it's data that is already there. So I will try to think about your audience before putting a placeholder, because some people think that, oh, it's already pre-filled, and it's not. Yeah, it depends on the placeholder as well, right? Because if you put a name like Abigail Jones, and people say, oh, there's an Abigail Jones in my account, I've seen that, right? From people's like, what is this Abigail doing in my account? It's like, no, that's like an example of what data you have to put. So be careful with that. Okay, but let's leave it there, no worries. Now this is our component, and we have the state. Of course, this state, we're not using it yet. So that means that when we put this component, the contact form, in our page, right, we can enter.
Already.
Yeah, that's the placeholder. Okay, let me go back and just move right now. Now, how do inputs work in React? So inputs work in a format that React calls control inputs or control components. Control. Let me write the word. Control inputs. So control inputs is, for a control input, you need two things. You need a value property and onChange property, right? And this means that the value that the input has in any time, you are controlling that, right? So whatever value I set to that control, if I say here value equals John, this is the value that the input will show, right? And it's no way to change it because it's controlled. So what I'm controlling, what is the value of that input? In this moment is John. Nothing I can do to change it. You see, I'm trying to type on that input, nothing happens. Because the value is always John. That's a constant. Now, what should we do here? Instead of putting this constant, we put what?
Email.
Email, the state, exactly. So we can say email. So now that means that whatever value that state has, that's what the input will have, right? Now the thing is that email is always empty, right? And nothing that I'm doing here, typing it, it will change it. So I need to
On change.
actually add the onChange, and that's the other value that I have to pass, an onChange handler. So every time you have a component that has an on property, that's like a handler. It's a function that you have to pass, right? So the second one is onChange. And again, I will start doing handlers now. So handle change. And this handle change is a function in inputs that takes an event. And that event
Is on change.
has something called a target. That target is our DOM component, right? The component from the DOM. And remember from the DOM, how do you get the value of an input?
The value.
The value. So we can do now set email event target value. And whatever thing you type, that will be the new value. And because we are setting that to email, email will change and then it will represent that change, right? So right now we have an input that will allow me to actually write email. An email, that state always have that value that we just write there. So if I go to the contact form here, you will see that the state has that value. If I modify the value, let's go mary@do.com. That's exactly what the state will have, right? So that's how inputs work in React, using a control input. And remember, control input require a value and an onChange function. Some different inputs require different set of properties, but always two. The thing that says the value and the thing that changes the value. I'm saying this because, for example, some libraries have, for checkbox, they have like check and onCheck instead of value onChange, right? So it depends on the library, it depends on the component. I've seen this before, like using instead of value onChange, they use check and onCheck or something like that. Cool. So that's how we set the value. Now let's make something interesting here. Remember, sometimes people write spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they write another email like John. But what if we want to? I mean, that's a big, because emails are really hard to validate an email is really hard. It's a lot of libraries and none of them look alike. But for now, we only want to remove the space, right? I don't want them to use space. And the other thing is, even if they write the email with capital letters, I want to simplify it to lowercase, right? So instead of doing mary@gmail.com, something weird like this, I want all to be lowercase, right? And no spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So first, the lowercase.
So after changing the state, we can do toString, I guess.
Well, this is a string already.
I mean to lowercase.
So now, I'm typing in uppercase, by the way. Nothing happened. Even if I have the caps letter, nothing, because every time I write, it will convert it to lowercase. So internally, the data is always lowercase. Now, how do I discourage the space? Again, the same thing. I can just call here and say replace space by empty string. I know this is not the best way because it will do it only once. If I have multiple space, it will not work, right?
Trim.
Oh, trim. That's actually better. But trim only takes from the edges.
The last one and the first.
Okay, let's do trim.
Usually both.
Yeah, from the edges. But again, that, at least that works because if you type space, that's on the end. It will not allow that. So let's go, and you see, space doesn't no longer works. It's because I'm trying to change to a space, and then it's trimming the space, right? I can write an email, but as soon as I do space, it will stay there because the space is not allowed now. I'm trimming the space. Okay. So what I'm saying is that you can do anything that you need before changing the actual state, right? You can do whatever value. You can pass whatever value. Let's say I want to just put here my own email. Every time I write, that's what it will show up, right? Nothing I can do to change it because every time I click on that and it's changing, it's replacing by that. Okay, so that's another. Okay, we don't have to. I mean, this is the simplest way, by the way. Cool. Yeah. Questions about the inputs? Inputs? Good? Okay, and let's do one more example for state, and it's the use of booleans. And this is very common when we want to control that something is appearing on the page or not. And we do this for modals, for example. So when we create a modal, let's say a modal to alert info. Right? We can use a modal component. A modal, remember, it's like, wait, let me find the modal. And remember, we are using React Bootstrap in this template, so we can find the modal component, yes, here. And here it is. So this is how we create a modal, right? Actually, this example is perfect. It's all I needed. So what is the name of the component? Alert info. Oh, I need to import useState. And I need to import modal. Oops. From React Bootstrap. Oh, the bottom. Good catch. Yeah. Okay. So notice here that this is my state, right? Show, set show. And initially it's false. The handle close will set the show to false. The handle show will set the show to true. By the way, I don't like this particular way to create functions. I really like to have them as with arrows, with curly brackets. Right? Better. And what we have is a button, and when we click on that button, we are showing the modal. And this handle show is what is doing what? It's changing the state to true. So that means it's going to show the modal. And notice that the modal has a property show. If it's true, it will show it. If it's not true, it will hide it. Okay? And the modal has an onHide handler. By the way, let me remove some things on this modal because it's really heavy. And I guess I need the footer. I don't need the state changes. Yeah, this one. A lot simpler. So let's see that here. Alert info. Okay. You click, we show the modal. And this is another pretty common way to use a state. Now, if the state is true, what will happen?
We will show the modal.
As soon as I change it, it will show the model, right? So the state is controlling that model, right? If it's true, it will show it. If it's false, it will hide it. Okay? Questions about useState? So we have an example of a Boolean here to show, hide something. We have an example of an input to input data on a text field or an input field. And we have examples of counters here as well. So we can create as many states as we want. In this case, we have two. There's one over here. There's another one over here, right? You can have as many as you want. Of course, if you see that your component have like too many states, you're probably doing something not wrong, but it could be simplified somehow, right? Because it shouldn't be that many. Or maybe you can create a single state that has more data inside. Okay? So questions before I move on to the next subject.
Yeah. Is there any other function related to state? Because I was reading the documents and I saw use effect.
Oh, we're gonna see use effect now, and it has nothing to do with use state.
Okay.
Notice that we use state now for showing a model, to input an email, and to count stuff, right? That's data. Remember, state, that hook, the use state, is for data inside the component, right? We're creating data inside the component. And every time that state changes, the component gets re-rendered. If we're using a static variable, it doesn't re-render. And if we use property, every time the property changes, the component re-renders again. Okay? So use state is just a hook. But I think you're confusing because it's also another hook that we will learn now.
Okay.
Now, that's the state hook. And this is one of the main hooks that we use in React because, of course, it's using to hold state inside a component. Okay? By the way, at this point, with only the use state hook, there are a lot of apps that you can start building already, right? Like, for example, that project that we have later is the traffic light, right? It's basically 3 lights. Whenever you click, that's the light that will be on. How would you represent that state? If I have a traffic light, let's say this is my traffic light, and I have here one light for the, whoops, too big. This would be red. This will be yellow, and the other one is green, right? So how can, and only one of these is on at a certain time.
You set red, set yellow.
So how do we represent that state?
So with a string and then a conditional. Yeah.
Just represent the state. What is the value? If I'm creating a state, you mean light like this, and set light? What would be the initial value?
False.
What?
False.
Red.
Wait, what? False.
False. False.
False. Okay, wait, let's go there. False. Why false? If it's on and off.
Yeah.
But that doesn't tell me which light is on and off. I mean, all of them are on and off?
Yeah.
Only one should be on and off, right?
Red, set yellow, set blue.
On red,
Oh, you want 3 ones? One for red, one for yellow, one for blue? That would mean that,
Green, rather.
no, that would mean that at a certain time, all of the lights might be on. If you want if you want a traffic light that can do that, it's fine. But I don't think traffic lights can do that. Usually they have only one on or none of them are on.
Yeah.
If no one is coming, turn on green.
what sensors?
Turn on green.
So what would be the state? I mean,
It's a string.
what?
A string with the 3 colors: red, yellow, and green.
Wait. Like this?
No. Only red. I mean,
Only red.
we
Okay.
start with red.
So in this point, what does that mean?
that the red light.
That the red light is on. That's an alternative. Yeah. And if you change it, if you want to change the light to yellow, what would be the call? How do you do it?
So you set light to
Set light
yellow.
yellow, and now it's yellow. So you see the state represents whatever the traffic light. What if I want them all to be off? I want the traffic light to be off. So light, what? Off? Yeah, it could be off. I mean, because it's not red or light or yellow. Or it could be undefined, or it could be no, whatever means to you that the traffic light is off, right? Now, this is one of the ways to do it, but what did you do? 0.
Oh, 0, 1, 0.
0, 1, 2, whatever is whatever is, or 1, well, 0 will be off, 1 is red, 2, I mean, you get the point. It's like the state represents the whatever you want to represent. Yeah, exactly. Make sense? Remember, states gets translated by the component as a visual representation of that state. Whatever you want that state to mean, that's what the component will render. Okay? Cool. So that's the exercise that we'll build today, later. But you can actually, let's do another exercise. Just modeling the state. I don't want you to code anything. So let's say you see this application, you have your phone, you have the notes, or no, the task, or is it task? What? The to-do list? How do you call that app?
The reminders?
Reminders, that's the app. So how will I model the reminders app? What would be the state of a reminders app?
An input.
No, just the state. Don't forget about the
Set reminder?
reminder or reminders?
Reminders.
Because it's plural, right? I have multiple. And what is the set reminders? So this is the function that allows me to change the reminders. So I know since useState, what will be the initial value?
I guess an array, an empty array.
An empty array. So that means that I have no reminders in my app. Now, what if I want to create a reminder or add a reminder to my?
So you use the set reminders, and then you I guess push to the new reminder.
You cannot merge. I see where you're going, but you cannot merge this function and push. But I get what you're saying. That's a good. Another thing important about state that we didn't discuss is that you cannot modify. You cannot modify the state variable. That doesn't work, and actually React will complain about that. So if you have, like for example here, if you have light, you cannot do light equal red. That would be an error, and React will complain on the runtime. I mean, it's not technically incorrect, like the syntax is correct, it's JavaScript, but in the browser, if you try to run this code, React will complain. It's like you're trying to change the state using an assignment. That's not good. You have to use the function. Okay? So the same thing will happen if I try to push something into that reminders variable, right? Because that's not the way we change the state. The way we change the state is using the set reminders function. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. Set reminders, but
Can you use a handle?
yeah. We always use a handle. What I'm saying is that for arrays, you have to create another array,
Oh, and then add it to the.
right? You have to copy all the previous reminders and then push
The new one.
the new one.
And then change the state.
I don't know, whatever that reminder is, I don't know, buy groceries. And then, what?
Set reminder.
Set reminders. That new reminders function. That new reminders variable. But again, I can do push on a new variable, but I cannot do push on the reminders from the state. Okay? Now, this extra push step is not really necessary. For this syntax, we can do this right here. And you probably haven't seen this before. Groceries, come on. Okay. You probably haven't seen this syntax before, the 3 dots. Let me explain them. This is what we call destructuring. Well, not destructuring. Actually, this is the spread operator. Okay, the spread operator is the 3 dots. And it's basically taking all the elements of the array and putting them in another array. Right? So you have an array like this. So you have an array A with 1, 2, 3, and you have another array B with 4 and hello. Right? And then you do dot 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 A, comma, dot 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 B. That means that the resulting array will be 1, 2, 3, 4, hello.
Is that exclusive from JavaScript?
That's JavaScript, yeah.
Exclusive? I mean, it only is a syntax only from JavaScript?
What do you mean only?
Like the
This is
spread
also
operator.
from JavaScript, yes.
Can you find that in any other language?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common.
Huh?
I think most of them have, like Rails have it, Ruby has it, Python, I think it has something similar. They have different names and different symbols. Like, for example, in Rails, I think it's an asterisk or 2 asterisks. I don't know. But in JavaScript, it's 3 dots. So that's a spread. It's spreading all the values. Now, if you do this and then you put another thing, buy groceries, what do I have?
1, 2, 3,
Buy groceries, exactly. And that's the new array that I'm just putting there, right? Now, instead of buying groceries, is the task value from another state. And I'm just messing with your head now, but task, set task, use state, empty string. And what is this another state for? For the input on the top of the application, right? You have a way to put the task. So that's the state I would use for that. So it's a task, it's connected to that input, and as soon as I hit enter or whatever, I click a button, I will put the task after all the reminders, and I will set that as a new reminder. So now in my list of reminders, we'll have all the previous reminders plus a new one, the task. And it will be at the end. If I want to put them at the beginning, I will do task, comma, all the other tasks. So that will be on the top. I don't know, whatever you want. So you see that now you have control of data inside your React application. Okay? We will see this in a second. And the effect. You know what? Let's hold the use effect for after the project, because I think we don't need it for the project. We only need a state and onClick. And remember, onClick and use handle. Okay. Cool. So let's take a break for now.
Can you go back